Good morning, everybody. Or actually, it's afternoon. Actually, it's evening. See, I knew if Lefty wasn't here, I would blow it right off the bat. Anyway, here we are at Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com. Man, I'm grateful for the weather. We have a jam-packed show today. I am excited. One, I don't have to talk to Lefty the entire show, and that's always a bonus, right? That's going to make a lot of my loyal listeners happy. The other bonus is I have two women in the studio. One of them's Phaedra Gay, and she has been here before as a guest host. She's a libertarian. And we also have Dr. Lee Hieb, who is running for governor on apparently the libertarian ticket, which includes the Republicans. I also am doing a little bit of non-paid sponsorship with my drink there. Sorry about that. So anyway, Phaedra, how have you been?
I've been great, Doc. It's good to see you again after, what has it been, like a year since I did this?
About a year,
yeah.
Yes, you bet.
Sorry about that.
So what have you been up to?
Normal stuff. Working, not watching your show. Sorry about that.
Oh, why are you watching the show? We even moved it just so you could tune in.
I know, it was actually more convenient at the earlier time. Sorry.
Oh, now, I don't know. We're going to have to take an audience vote. Is Phaedra just plain dumb, or she just want to remain ignorant? What's the vote?
Are those really my only two choices?
Yeah. Well, if you're not watching the show...
Because I'm pretty sure it's not one of those.
What if you're not watching the show? What am I supposed to do then?
Sorry.
Oh, my God. And then I have her guest host. That's incredible. Oh, man. So
hey, you called me.
I did call you. I'm sorry. I don't know. I thought you'd want to come on. I don't know.
I'm happy to be here.
What? You're happy to be here? Good deal. So what are you thinking about all the latest goings on? Because there for a while, all the primaries were kind of dull. And suddenly the Senate primaries heating up, the congressional primaries heating up. You know, we got two different people jumping in to take on Governor Branstad from his own party. What do you think about all that going on?
I'm really curious to see how everything's going to turn out. I think it's going to be interesting, especially with everything going on with Governor Branstad. You know, it's really hard for anybody to unseat an incumbent, especially one who has historically, if not so much lately, been beloved by his constituency. Not sure that's necessarily recently true, but it certainly used to be. You used to hear all kinds of great things about Terry Branstad just does the right thing for Iowa. And you're not hearing as much of that, so I think it's going to be an interesting...
Well, what have you been hearing that's been putting him down in the polls a little bit lately? Because Ed Fallon talks about all the time about how Jack Hatch is within 10 points of Governor Branstad, and he thinks that's a good thing. So, I mean, what have you been hearing about the governor makes you think he's a little bit more vulnerable this year than usual?
I think that the fact that there's another candidate in his own party at all is somewhat indicative, frankly. Right. I can't call to mind anything specific that I've heard, but...
Well, here, he's been beset by a bunch of... Governor Branstad has been beset by a bunch of, stirred up tempest in a teapot kind of things. First, we had Toledo, and now we have, the payments to people that got fired. So we had Tom Hoefling on. He's a Republican candidate for governor as well a little bit earlier, and that was his motivation to run. And now we have Dr. Lee Hieb, who is a surgeon, I believe.
True.
From where are you from?
Well, I live in Logan. I work out of Lake City.
Oh, okay. Oh, so way up there in the north. All right.
Yep.
North to Alaska. Anyway, so what made you want to run?
Well, I'm not a professional politician. This is my family came here in 1871 to Iowa, and honestly, you used to make good comments about how Governor Branstad has been beloved by the people for many years, but the real truth of the matter is that for my entire life and for my entire family's life, the Iowa government has grown through both Republican and Democrat administrations. And the problem is with that, when government grows, the private sector shrinks and every Iowan becomes poorer. I mean, Governor Branstad can pat himself on the back and say he's gotten us back in the black, but he's gotten us back in the black by putting us in private sector in the red. And, we are number one for corporate taxes in the nation right now. He just passed or is about to pass the biggest budget and the biggest growth in government in the entire history of the state, which means we're going to move up from the personal taxes where we were like number 15. Now we're going to move up to number 5 in the nation. I mean, we're up there with California, New Jersey, and New York. And if you add to that a very burdensome regulatory environment, one of the things that propelled me into this race, well, I was asked by the Libertarian Party to run because I'm a surgeon and I know about it, and I've talked for years against Obamacare and government takeover of medicine. But the real thing that propelled me into this race was talking to my local meat market guy. You know, in Lake City, every time I go get bacon, he has the best bacon in the world. I go in there and he's always having trouble staying in business because of the state government, because of overregulation and the taxation. And actually, I have a little thing on my website, www.hieb.2014 or hieb2014.com.
That's tough. When you first get this stuff going, it's kind of tough.
I've been saying that so much. Anyway, but it is a little video of just me interviewing him, and he is. He's just the perfect example of what government does when it gets too big and too oppressive. And we need to take back the state from the political professional class that is running it.
You bet. Now, one of the things that I do now I've known Terry Branstad since I was a kid, and I went to the same school where he's a president of. So, you know, I do have an association with him. And I'm not trying to denigrate the governor, but everybody talks right now about how popular the governor is and he's going to be difficult to beat, and I agree with that. However, what people forget is there have been times over the history of Iowa where he's made some very unpopular decisions. In his first administration, he made a deal with the teachers union, and conservatives were upset about that. Terry Branstad does have a tendency to not necessarily alienate, but to upset the conservative base. He had a pro-abortion lieutenant governor for a while, and that was very upsetting to the base as well. So I guess if you're a libertarian, what's your stance on the social issues of today? And we'll tackle abortion first.
Okay.
You know, so.
Well, okay, and I hope this isn't a 20-second soundbite answer, so give me a chance to actually say
No, you
this.
got a solid 2 minutes before we have to take a break.
Okay, all right. You know, I think that a society is known how it takes care of the most vulnerable members of a society. For Terry Branstad to say he's pro-life and to bring Obamacare into the state is not a pro-life stance, because Obamacare, quite frankly, devalues not only the unborn, but it devalues disabled children, the elderly, and the infirm. You know, if you ask me, as governor, if you ask me what I would do, you know, I've read the Constitution, and the Constitution doesn't mention abortion one way or another. Therefore, it's messy. Representative government is messy, but by the 10th Amendment, it means that the people or the state has the decision here. And I believe this is so important to the people of Iowa that ultimately the decision should rest with the people of Iowa, and their elected representatives represent them, not with the governor, not with a panel of judges, and not with, you know, God help us, a little panel of experts. So if the legislative arm brings a bill to my desk, if I were governor, I'm going to sign it as the will of the people, which also means that you need to not just sit in your bathtub drinking sherry, think you're going to get the government you want. You need to have people that are elected to office that represent your values. So, okay. I mean, there's more to it than that. But I also have to say is I don't think you can legislate everything. There are lots of good things, lots of bad things we'd love to make happen. You know, you can't make things, we've never gotten rid of anything by legislating it away. And I would like us, if I look at Iowa, I think of all the great things in Iowa are due to the free will of free people. And generally the bad things are due to big government that's gotten in the way of us doing the right thing.
All right. Well, that's a pretty straightforward answer. We're going to take a break right now. Wanted to thank everybody for tuning in to Doc and Lefty. I want to thank our special guest, Dr. Lee Hieb, who will give you the entire hour, so hopefully she'll be with us after the break. Please tune in to our sponsors and watch that. You never know. Sometimes I make people so mad they get up and leave. Usually that's Lefty's job, though.
I'm nice and polite. I don't know what's wrong with Lefty.
You are nice and polite, Phaedra. You're so great. Thanks for showing up. And special guest host, Phaedra. You have to, she'll be talking a little bit this next segment. We'll be back right after the break. Listen to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com.
Petrosh and Associates, how can I help you?
Petrosh and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Petrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
You're back with Doc and Lefty. This is Doc. We have special guest host, Phaedra Gay Strohmeyer. I keep forgetting.
It's
You're
fine.
married now. Sorry. So Phaedra Strohmeyer.
You'll get it
in
eventually.
here. I will. Jeez, you know. And we have a special guest, Lee Hieb. Now, before the break, I asked her an abortion question. I'm going to have Phaedra kind of clarify what Dr. Hieb said. Phaedra, take it away.
So you mentioned shortly before the break that you would, if presented with such a bill, you would sign a bill into law making abortion legal in the state of Iowa. I assume that means that also if you were presented with one making it illegal, you would sign that too, because you believe in the will of the people.
Well, I don't think you can have it one way for some things and the other way for other things. If government is really by the people, then I think we have to trust the people. And it's not, we already know what government by an oligarchy is, why government, a group of people at the top who think they're smarter and wiser than we are. I actually do trust the people of Iowa. And that's why I got a kick out of when I said this. I had, Kevin Hall or somebody wrote in the Republican Journal about, well, that means that Dr. Hieb would sign a bill on bestiality. I said, really? And all these talking points on bestiality came out. And I thought I just didn't expect that to happen. But really, the people of Iowa are not going to do that. I mean, that says to me, what faith does the Republican Party have in the people of Iowa? I don't think that's going to happen. And that's the hard part about representative government, is actually trusting that we are a government of the people. Now, having said that, I personally think I don't understand this partial birth abortion. I think that's murder. I don't understand how you could possibly put that into something like this, and I don't expect that to come forward. But honestly, let me put another point in that. We've tried legislatively to deal with this abortion issue since 1973, and it kind of goes back and forth a little issue, but we're not really moving the football one way or another. And I do think there's a reason for that, and I think the reason is this, is that really those guys that are running the state, the professional politicians that are driving us over the economic cliff, they love for us to kind of talk about these social issues. They get this all ginned up about a lot of stuff, and I'm not saying they're not important, but they're not really doing anything about it. What they're doing is waving the red flag out there, so we get all excited, and we're not paying attention to the fact that, with the other hand, they're pretending to be different in public, but in private, they're legislating together to grow government. And I think that's our bait. I think big government is the biggest evil we face. And you get government out of our lives. In the Soviet Union, the average woman had 7.2 abortions per person. That wasn't a free society. They didn't have choices. We need to be a free society where we give women choices, support. I grew up when we had extended families, we had extended communities, we had interconnected communities and churches and groups, and they helped each other. But what happens now? Because of big government, the fabric of society is kind of rotten. And what we do now is, you don't need an extended family. You don't need to know your neighbor. You don't need to really be connected with people, because you can just pick up a phone and call some social worker and get the help you need. That does not teach you ethical behavior, and it does not really help solve these issues. I think we get big government out. I believe free people can solve these issues.
So then, to your mind, how do we get the small government by the people?
Okay. Well,
how do we get to that point? Because we're clearly not there.
No, we're not. And let me just tell you that we can't keep going on like this. I mean, is this like a petri dish? If the growth of the bacteria fills the petri dish, there's not room for anything else. We cannot have government. We have 20% more government workers per capita in the state of Iowa than does California. That's a scary statistic, in my opinion. Well, I think, first of all, there's several bad things we just cannot accept. One of them is we cannot accept Common Core. And I was
wondering when you were going to get to this. As we move alphabetically through the list of issues here, abortion, bestiality, Common Core.
Yeah, right. And I don't see
go
bestiality as really an issue in Iowa, quite frankly, in spite of that commercial about castrating hogs. I really think that we need to end Common Core for a lot of reasons. But it's just bad educationally. Before there's a perfect example of, Ronald Reagan's aphorism that if the problem is government, more government doesn't make it better. Before we had government intervention, we had no state board of education, we had no federal board of education, we had or departments of education, and we didn't have all this kind of strings and money floating around. Local communities took care of their education, and we were number one. We could afford, every little town could afford that big brick schoolhouse that is now sitting empty. And then we've got all these departments with all these standards they want to set for us. And the thing that offends me the most about Common Core is the implication is, well, if the government didn't set standards, somehow you parents wouldn't want to set standards for your children. Oh, that's completely false. I mean, my two boys know that my standards for them were a lot higher than anything they got at the school. And if you look at what the Common Core questions and standards are, it's really pathetic. I mean, it's going to dumb our kids down. In fact, it would be here's a great moment for Iowa. Here's how Iowa could be the very best in the nation, because you know what's going to happen. Common Core is morphing into all this. People that say that they're for local control, but then they get rid of Common Core. The governor unsigns Common Core, but he lets it become Indiana Core or Florida Core and now Iowa Core. Well, and on my website, I actually have the letter posted from Governor Branstad where he asked Common Core into the state, by the way. But anyway,
I saw that.
Yeah. So the point being is that you've got to do more than just say, I'm not for Common Core. You've got to also get rid of this idea that somebody extrinsic to the school district sets standards. Once we do that, I think we've really turned back local control. So that's number one. Common Core's got to go.
Okay.
Number two is we simply cannot afford Obamacare. Obamacare is going to massively increase the damage to small business, but it also massively increases the cost of taking care of the poor. Here's how it used to work. And I just found this out recently when my son's insurance went up 400%. He's a young guy. He's 25 years old. You'll appreciate this, being a physician, that in spite of me complaining about all sorts of things, he went into medical school. But he doesn't smoke, he's healthy, he doesn't have any medical problems. His insurance went up from $47 a month, $47 a month, which I thought was reasonable, to $167 a month. That's almost a 400% increase. Now, that's basically just happened because of the onset of Obamacare or state exchanges. Now, we didn't have to bring on the state exchanges. If you don't bring on the state exchanges, I wrote to the governor, I know that letter got into his hands. The damages to small business goes down. The penalties to small business go down if you don't have the state exchanges. So I don't know why we did it, but what it's going to do is it's going to cost us, we simply cannot afford it. We might be in the black today, we're not going to be in the black tomorrow. What happens now is, it used to be that when you wanted to have a Medicaid patient that couldn't afford to pay for their care, okay, you pay the taxes into the state government. The government doles out these tax dollars to the various different doctors and hospitals that treat the poor. And it wasn't enough to cover the cost of care, but it was kind of shared charity. I'm not saying it was the best system, but that was the system. And they paid a small amount. Now what they're going to do is they're going to go out and buy these insurance policies at 400% the market value in order to then take care of the poor. I mean, that's not an economic model that's self-sustaining. But it's an economic model that the insurance companies love, and it has to do with the 3-to-1 rule. It's a bureaucratic, it's the type of unintended consequence of bureaucracy. So the price of this thing just got skyrocketed, and then the bureaucracy in Des Moines is just going to expand like crazy. So we have to stop those. But beyond that, to deal with all the regulations that's killing small business, all those I live on Highway 30, and all the small meat markets are closing down. All the small dairies are closed. We only have 5. I know it sounds funny. If you live in the city, you don't appreciate the importance of this, but we only have 5 independent chicken processors in the entire state. We're supposed to be the heartland of rural agriculture. Why is that happening? It's because of bureaucracy, and we have to unsign those unelected boards so we deregulate this.
Now we're with Dr. Lee Hieb, who's the Libertarian candidate for governor, running against Governor Branstad. We're glad she's with us tonight. We also have special guest host Phaedra Gay Strohmeyer, and we'll be back right after the break. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll see you back in a minute.
On the whole, I think Washington, D.C. is a terrible place. It's hot, it's humid, kind of smells, and it's totally lacking individuals who know how to create jobs and live within their means. Hi, I'm Brad Zahn, and I approve this message. And I'm running for Congress because we owe it to future Iowans to fix the mess that was created in Washington, D.C. I've had real experience creating jobs, cutting taxes, and balancing budgets while mayor and in the state senate. If you trust me to represent you, I promise I'll go to Washington, D.C. and do the right thing. and come home every Sunday to spend time with my wife, my kids, and my neighbors here in Iowa. We cannot leave this country in worse shape than we found it. I will not pass this debt on to my children or yours. I will go to Washington, D.C. and tell them enough is enough. Standing together is the only way we're going to get Washington, D.C. to listen, and I hope you'll join me in this fight.
Brad Zahn for United States Congress.
So, we are back. We have Dr. Lee Hieb, gubernatorial candidate of the Libertarian Party, with us tonight, and special guest host Phaedra Strohmeyer.
You remembered.
Woo, you know, I can be taught.
Aw.
So, well, we had several questions coming in regarding your stance on abortion. The first is if you sign a bill that outlaws abortion, let's say that's what the people come up with. Say we're going to outlaw abortion in Iowa, and you have to go to Nebraska to get it. And if you go to Nebraska to get it, we won't let you back in the state. Just an extreme example.
Yeah,
an extreme example. Let's say the people of Iowa pass that bill. Is your second part of banning an abortion be to increase social spending in order to compensate for those babies that are going to be born to people that essentially don't want these children? I don't know how else to phrase it that'd be more politically correct. But are you going to be able to provide the social support, the money for the social support these families are going to need to raise these children that they can't abort at this time?
Well, first of all, I mean, I see your point, but it's kind of a straw man argument because you're saying those are the only two choices. And I don't think those are the only two choices. I mean, I think as you improve the
Well, what would be the other choices then?
Well, I mean, we've seen in every country where economics and education improve, the rate of unintended and unwanted children go down. So you have a better family planning strategy. So that's number one. But so I don't think it's just all or none. My mother was an old OB nurse in Rochester, New York years ago. And what I'm saying about, I'm not saying that I think that we should pass laws about this. I want government out of this. I want government out of our lives. You cannot make anything go away by making it illegal. Let's just start there and say you cannot make it go away. You can drive it underground.
But you can certainly make it. You're right. You can drive down the numbers of them. I mean, since the passage of Roe v. Wade, the numbers of abortions have exploded compared to the numbers when before Roe v. Wade. So that's one aspect. And I guess the second aspect is, I understand as people become more educated and we become wealthier, then, rates of unwanted pregnancies go down. The problem is we're the wealthiest country on the planet by a large margin. And we are, as far as doctorate degrees go, we are one of the most educated countries in the world. So at what point do you say, well, all right, we're wealthy enough and we're educated enough, how come the rates of abortion haven't fallen? And that's the issue. So if you're going to ban abortion, are you then going to provide the social security network that you're going social and then a space security, not social security, social space security network that these families are going to require to raise these children that are not going to be banned by or that are not going to be aborted?
Well, this is a really tough question because there are a lot of legal issues that come down to this. When you talk about, when life begins, one of the issues is if you're going to legally adjudicate things thinking that life begins at conception, there's a lot of incredibly difficult legal things that fall out about that. And there's a lot of legal things and a lot of problems that fall out about banning abortion. I agree with you on that. Certainly, I think you need to have support structures, but my point is that we used to have those support structures. We used to have a lower rate of abortion, and we used to have good support structures when we had intact families. Why don't we need to be looking at why we don't have intact families today. And one of the reasons is it's easy to not have an intact family because you depend on mother government. And that's a problem. And so this isn't a single factor that you solve. And I would say that it's not just about economics. It's about restoring the fabric of society. And there are social things you have to do. I think personally, I think that private people do a much better job at charity than government ever does. And I think there are lots of agencies right now that can be employed to take care of things like this. But the specifics of that, I hope we don't get into this problem, because I would like to see us deal with the social issues socially.
All right. So now I'm going to play flip side of this, which is Lefty's job. Now,
Sorry, I'm falling down on the job.
no. I mean, you didn't see the questions. I saw the
I
questions.
thought that was Lefty's question.
No. That's actually a question I ask all the candidates. If you are willing to sign an abortion bill, and let's say the people of Iowa come to you and say, we do want late-term abortions, you're willing to sign that bill as well?
Well, I don't really think that's going to happen. I'm from Iowa, too.
It's a yes or no question. Are you going to sign that bill and trust the will of the Iowans? Or
well, I'm going to trust in the will of the Iowans, but I'm going to trust them not to bring that bill forward.
All right. So if they do bring that bill forward,
it is government. That's what I'm saying. Government is messy, and that's why New York votes for things that we wouldn't vote for. But I don't live in New York, and I trust that Iowans are left to think about these things. Will do the right thing.
Right. So basically, about your stance is a typically libertarian stance, which is the less government is intrusive, the better off it's going to be.
Absolutely.
All right, and then we get to the C one. What C were you guys talking about at the break? I forgot.
Oh.
Right. Sorry, go ahead, Phaedra.
I've forgotten, too.
I kind of forgot about that, too, actually.
It's a smooth show today. That's what happens when Lefty's gone.
Don't ever let him leave again. So we're talking here about abortion a lot, and whether you would sign things that are for or against abortion, not things that are pro-life or pro-choice. How do you feel about the term pro-life, pro-choice, either of those being used to define what is really just do I support this particular action or not?
I don't think it makes it like a light switch, and it's not. This is not even for people in the pro-life movement. I've found, speaking to people that are very connected with this, that there's differences of opinions among that group of people, and I'm speaking the organized pro-life movement. I'm not talking about everybody that's pro-life, but for example, and this is the example I give, and I'm not an obstetrician. Thankfully, I don't have to deal with these things very much. I'm an orthopedic surgeon. We're pretty concrete. We use hammers and things. But the real issue here is, I took a Hippocratic oath to support life. I don't think it's the role of doctors to kill people. End of story. And I think and let me just be very clear about this. The reason that for the most of my professional career, I've been the president of the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, and we are the voice of private practice because we think government medicine is frankly unethical. And if you look at every government that's taken over medicine, it ends in a culture of death, as I said earlier, where not only the unborn, but other people, the elderly, the infirm, disabled children are devalued. And you can see that if anybody wants to look at it, just look at the facts in the Netherlands. It's quite shocking about the Netherlands. I could tell that story.
Well, it's in the interest of a large government to have the fittest population available.
Death is the cheapest
to not
alternative.
have to support all of those others. So I'm kind of with you there that large government does tend to want that. Right.
And it's a terrible thing that it actually fractionates society because my friend is Canadian, and the problem is young people resent the older people getting care. But the reality of medicine is if you're 25 years old, you generally don't need much care, and if you're 85, you do. And that's just the way the distribution of the funds are. But that's not what you see with government medicine. So having said that, I believe in the Hippocratic Oath. I believe in life. Now,
we're going to take a quick break. We're with special guest host Phaedra Strohmeyer. Thank you for sitting in for Lefty. You're doing a fantastic job.
Thanks.
We also have special guest Dr. Lee Hieb. She is a surgeon from Logan, Iowa. Is that correct?
Correct.
And she's running up against on the Libertarian ticket against Terry Branstad. And I'm going to tell you, anybody who's going to take on Terry really has got a lot of chutzpah. So anybody that's out there running for a statewide office, well, they have my respect. We want to mention real quick Des Moines Anesthesia PC. They do a lot of good work. They have offices here in Des Moines and in Fort Dodge. They do a lot of pain management. If you want, you give them a call, 263-5316. When you look them up on Google, make sure you put Des Moines Anesthesia, P.C. And that way you'll get the right one, because otherwise you'll get people from California, and you don't want those people from California doing your gas. I mean, that's a long tube to run. Okay. So we're going to be back right after this break. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Want to thank all of our sponsors, including Lubinas Law Firm, Bertrosian Associates, Brad Zahn for Congress, and there's somebody else on. Halo Capital. Want to thank all those people. We'll be back right after the break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
All right, we're back with special guest host Phaedra Strohmeyer and special guest Dr. Lee Hieb. We've covered the abortion pretty good. The issue, I mean, just about 6 ways from Sunday. We've covered Common Core. I guess the next topic really is the perceived corruption in the Branstad organization. What's your opinion about this? I mean, I've given my opinion before but Doctor, what's your opinion about what's going on in the Branstad administration in the last 9 months?
Well, I don't think it's just the last 9 months. I mean, I think this is an entrenched professional political class, and it's like somebody who has a house that's just too big to keep clean. When you get big government, you get big corruption, end of story. And at some point it happens to every government over a certain size. And I think you cannot take in all these tax dollars without getting corruption. You can change the staff, but the answer is you got to get to a smaller house, and we have to shrink government. That's the answer to the corruption problem.
So
how do we do that?
Well, we talked about that. I think a lot of, what I've discovered is a lot of stuff gets done in the state, not by your elected representatives, but by the unelected immortal boards. And they need to be unsigned. They need to be shuttled off to somewhere, and we need to get rid of some of these boards because, anybody in government that's worried about losing their job if it were a Hieb administration, what I would point out is for every job in government, we lose 2 in the private sector. So vice versa, you take away the government job, you're going to start growing government. I mean, we should be look at South, I'm going to segue a little bit, look at South Dakota. I mean, our biggest export to South Dakota right now is jobs and businesses, and that's because they have no state income tax and they have a low regulatory environment. We could be a booming, economically exciting state with just a few changes, but we have to get rid of, having all these government people, corrupt or not, and I think you cannot have a ton of government people without some corruption, and not per se because of the people, but because of the system. It's like businesses are like a 10K runner carrying a 150-pound man on his back. What happens when you get that guy off is you run fast. When business can get rid of all this regulatory overlay, it can really boom. And I think it's not just the corruption. But corruption is just a matter of size. It's the size of the government.
All right. So what do you think about Governor Branstad's deals to bring in Facebook and Microsoft? And apparently there's another Microsoft deal that just happened within the last week, I believe.
There's another Facebook one too, I believe.
Yes, there's a
a second.
Well, you're probably
is? I didn't know that one.
Yeah, I think they're getting plans to either expand their existing data center or maybe build a new one on the same campus.
Okay.
And my understanding, these are the ones that are done with tax incentives.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, tax incentive really needs. Let's call it what this really is. This is theft and bribery. We're stealing from small businesses. You're a small business, I take it. I mean, I'm a small business, or I used to be a small business. Farmers. We're stealing from the small guys, and we're giving to these big guys in the form of bribes. Come to the state, we give you a tax incentive. Well, as long as we have these huge budgets, those tax incentives just mean somebody else has to pay for those huge budgets, and that's the small businesses that don't rate tax incentives. I mean, I don't rate a tax incentive.
So then how do you argue against, for instance, the jobs that are brought into our state by, say, bribing these large companies, Facebook, Microsoft, to come to a flyover state and build data centers and build their headquarters here? I mean, we're the insurance capital of the world, or at
we
least
used to have small towns. We used to have small towns filled with small jobs. We used to have small businesses, and Main Street was booming. And now what do we have? We have those jobs are going away. This is not and I don't know the exact proportions, but you can just see it if you drive down the highways. You go to small towns, they've lost their small businesses. And it's because the regulatory burden and the tax burden disproportionately taxes small business. So small businessmen are in trouble in order to bring in these big guys. Ultimately, if you want one food processor, if you want, one, potato chip maker, you want one person to do, one huge ice cream conglomerate, that's what you're getting with this kind of policy. If you want a variety and you want small businesses to have, I want an equal playing field. It's not the role of government to pick winners and losers. The role of government is to make sure that your individual liberties are secure and then get out of the way. That's you talk about the great right-wing conspiracy, the great libertarian conspiracy. This is a joke, but it's true, is to take over government, shrink government, and then let you live your life.
So to go back a little bit to what you said about the small businesses, the small farms, the small towns, we used to have that. That's true. But we also didn't used to have a lot of things that we do now. We have the technology. We have a global economy that we simply didn't have, 15, 20, 30, 50 years ago. We have that now. Is there still the same market for a small town, a small business, a small farm? Or have we gotten so globalized that we need the large things too?
Well, if I had my choice, I would choose the tasty bacon in my local meat market, for example. I'm offended every day that and I'm not a big fan of raw milk. I confess I really don't like the taste as well as I like the big milk, but really, doesn't it offend people that from the time you get up in the morning till you go to bed at night, you're regulated to death, and they've regulated away the small dairies. So you don't have an option to buy raw milk. You don't have an option of different types of cream and things. It's all the one big business.
But doesn't the FDA keep us safe? I mean, that's what they're there for, and we do have one of the safest food supplies in the U.S. Isn't that the role of the FDA, is to regulate things so that we're safer?
Well, there's nothing you cannot legislate on the basis of safety. I mean, if you use that argument, you can just be regulated to death. Well, actually, that is the argument that we're being used to regulate to death. I mean, I have a whole lecture on the FDA. I mean, if you want to know why your drugs are so expensive, I'm talking legal drugs.
Oh, I'm telling you. Listeners of this show and that go to my blog, Dr. Lee Hieb, right here. I don't even know her. We don't even talk about it. That is the reason it's so expensive.
Absolutely.
I've said it over and over. Sorry to interrupt, Doctor. Go ahead.
No, well, but you're talking about safety. This is a little bit off food, but it also doesn't make it, the argument is made for drugs. Oh, we have to have the FDA to make sure our drugs are safer. Really? Every time the FDA says we finally passed it takes 15 years to get a drug through market, and I've been involved in these. Every year they say, we just saved 40,000 lives this year by passing X and Y, Z drug. Just remember that they killed 40,000 people every year waiting for that drug, which could have been with equal quality passed in probably a couple years. But they just put you through incredible paperwork wickets that doesn't add value or safety. It just adds cost and time. And lots of good drugs don't get to market.
Because of those reasons.
Oh,
that's right.
Yeah.
No, we're with special guest Dr. Lee Hieb, who is taking on Governor Branstad. You're running on the Republican ticket on the Libertarian one.
I'm a Libertarian ticket.
Ticket.
We are a different party.
I
was shocked when you said that, but
I'm a recovering. Take it back and I apologize.
I'm a recovering Republican.
Republican. Oh my goodness. And special guest host Phaedra Strohmeyer. We'll be back right after the break. Well, there's a Freudian slip if I ever heard one. We'll be back right after the break. Thanks everybody for tuning in. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning back in. We have a special guest, Dr. Lee Hieb, who is a surgeon running on the Libertarian ticket. That's even more ballsy, for lack of a better term, than regular. I'm sure. Am I going to get in trouble, Frank? All right, good. I just needed to check that, And special guest host Phaedra Strohmeyer. We're going to spend this segment talking a little bit about medical marijuana and legalization of marijuana. Phaedra, do you have a stance on that particular issue?
Personally, I'm very for it. Actually, from everything that I've ever seen or read, there's less harm that is done to you physically, physiologically from marijuana than traditional cigarettes. I'm for not just medical, but recreational use, frankly. And I don't smoke, so this isn't for me. This is just this
for
is
the
actually
other stoners out there.
Yes.
Is that it? All right, good. So
for the other stoners in the audience, no, this is probably more based on my libertarian leanings of it's none of my business. It is none of my business if you want to go light up a joint after this. I don't care. That doesn't affect me. It doesn't do anything to me. Unless you are holding me down and making me smoke it, that doesn't do anything. And not only that, but my mother just died of cancer last July. She was in horrible, horrible pain. Couldn't keep any food down. Her body couldn't withstand the chemotherapy, the radiation. Was extremely advanced. And I cannot count the number of times when I almost called up friends of mine from college that I hadn't talked to in 10 years and said, hey, are you still into this? Because I don't know what else to do. And I really didn't. So thinking more recently, there's that the medical marijuana oil, or I guess it's medical cannabis oil, that's been approved to treat children with extreme cases of epilepsy. I'm all for it. Go crazy. That's great.
All right. So what's your opinion? Do you think, we had Senator Joni Ernst vote against, I think she voted against medical marijuana oil. And I believe it went up to Governor Branstad's desk. I believe this is what happened, and I think he vetoed it. Is that correct? Do I have that correct?
I don't know. I know that it was passed through the houses. I don't know what.
That was the last I heard, too, was that it got passed through both houses. I hadn't actually.
All right. So right now, your governor, it's medical marijuana has been passed. I remember now, Joni Ernst voted for it because it was the right thing to do, I think. Rats, I wish I could remember off the top of my head. Damn Google for not being accurate. Anyway, so you have this medical marijuana bill in front of you for medical marijuana. Do you sign that or do you not sign that?
Well, can I broaden it to say all marijuana use? Can
Sure.
I talk about that?
We'll talk about broadening. Yeah.
Let's talk it in the broad terms, because I don't think, to be very honest, I think if you look across the states at medical marijuana, and I'm not an expert on medical marijuana because that's not my field. I'm not an oncologist, but there are lots of uses for it. But if you look at it, in any state that's allowed medical marijuana, they ultimately seem to legalize marijuana. And if you go on, I will make this plea, if you go on my website, Hieb2014.com, I have all these issues written out, so it's a little easier to say them in a written form sometimes. So you can refer to that, and I really tell you about the whole thing with drugs. But here's the point. I don't use drugs. I don't advocate drugs. I'm pretty confident my boys who are both in technical fields don't use drugs. And I don't think, with apologies to Willie Nelson, I don't think that very many truly successful people make marijuana a lifestyle. However, We've spent billions and billions of dollars. At the last estimate I saw, over $27 billion a year nationally, and I don't know how many billions we've spent in Iowa tax dollars fighting a war on drugs. And to my money, the only thing we've accomplished with this is we have militarized our police forces to the level, of an army. They now have equipment and tactics that we only used to have in the Army. As a trauma surgeon, I was in I did orthopedic trauma for years, high-level orthopedic trauma, and I can tell you, emergency rooms do not fill up with marijuana users. They fill up the mayhem that I take care of in orthopedics with motorcycle accidents, stabbings, shootings, domestic abuse, just fist fights, you name it. It's from three things. It's from alcohol, PCP, and meth. The marijuana guys are home eating Cheetos and watching the movie, I presume. It's just not, that's not the problem. And the second thing to say is the federal government cannot keep drugs out of the federal penitentiaries. Our local police can't keep it out of our schools, Catholic, religious. I know my son's Catholic school had drugs. The public schools have drugs. That's not how we keep drugs away from people. That's through social pressure and integrated communities. But we're spending a lot of money to do this. And to be very honest, it also, here's another point that my Lieutenant Governor, Ryan Kettleson, is a very smart guy, made this point, and I think it's a good one. Let's follow the money on this thing. We have more people for these small, non-aggressive, non-violent offenders in for drug use than we've ever had. What's happening? Well, we're privatizing our prison systems. And when you privatize the prison system, if you're a private business, who would you rather guard? Would you rather guard these murderous thugs, or would you rather guard a few potheads over in the corner? I'd take the potheads, and they are too. And so if you look at the statistics, what's happening, especially with these minimum sentencing laws, unintended consequences. We got all these low-level, nonviolent druggies in jail, and we're letting out the violent criminals. We're letting out the repeat child abusers. We're letting out the murderers earlier than we are letting out these guys. And this doesn't make sense to me. I want to see the violent guys in jail. If your Aunt Mabel has an alcohol problem, you get her treatment. But if your Aunt Mabel has a marijuana problem, you throw her in jail. And I just don't think that is a rational approach to this. Oh, here's a question. Maybe you knew this, Doc. I didn't know this. Do you know that we have a drug stamp for illegal drugs?
Yes.
A tax stamp? I mean,
yes.
What theater of absurd is this? I can just picture some guy going into the Department of whatever, I guess,
and asking for the illegal drug stamp?
And buying an illegal drug stamp so that he doesn't pay as much of a fine when he gets popped with his illegal drugs. I just think this is an incredibly absurd idea.
What's funny is having worked occasionally in the not necessarily prison system, but in the correctional system, I've ran into several people in my practice that routinely go down and get a drug stamp. And they get it, they put it on their stuff, they sell it to other people, they hope the cops don't pull them over or bug them. So I'm actually sitting there thinking this might be a covert government operation. I mean, this is conspiracy theory because lefties always give me a lot of flack about it. But, it's absolutely ridiculous. The other thing is about this is, that we allow alcohol, which is one of the most devastating drugs out there as far as, crimes and violence. And in fact, I can tell you, I bet you, in my experience, close to 80% of all psychiatric admissions are alcohol related. I would
my point.
I would bet that. And Dr. Hieb, I think, was probably seeing the same type of thing. Well, the thing is, it's still legal. You know why? We have a ton of revenue that comes in from that. Every bottle of 100 proof, if you buy a gallon of 100 proof alcohol, that's $13.50 in tax. It goes straight to the government without even blinking an eye, and you can't even ship it out of your facility without paying that tax. Now, we're going to get back. Well, Raz, we're up against the thing. I did it to myself. I leftied myself this time. So we're going to be back right after break. We want to thank Des Moines Anesthesia for sponsoring us, as well as Bertrosian Associates, Lubinas Law Firm, Brad Zahn for Congress, and Halo Capital, all of which are our sponsors. We'll be back right after break with Dr. Lee Hieb and special guest host Phaedra Strohmeyer. Please stay tuned. Watch the commercials.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. transformations. Change your life, change your relationships, transform your world.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Well, we're back. We're back live with Dr. Lee Hieb and guest host Phaedra Gay, Guv Strohmeyer, and we are going to continue our discussion about legalizing marijuana. I'm going to throw in my 2 cents. I'm going to turn it over to the ladies. If you medicalize marijuana, I'm all for that. Now, I'm a big fan of the Iron Lady Margaret Thatcher, and when she took over, she did a lot of great things for Britain. She brought a lot of things back under control, spending under control, returned them to the world stage, remained a power that was financially solvent and stable. The one thing she did that didn't work out so great is she made criminals out of drug users. And she got rid of the medical drug use program that they had. And their crime rates skyrocketed. I mean, within a year. Within a year passed through that bill, crime rates skyrocket. People rioting in the street. She gets out of power. They reverse that decision, and within a year, suddenly the crime rates plummet. So there is an advantage to medicalizing drugs of abuse. And I do believe that it should be regulated like alcohol, heavily taxed, and and they run down bootleggers. We had a song about it by Robert Mitchum, all right, an entire movie, several movies about bootleggers. And in fact, there's a reality show now. So if we start taxing this and then criminalizing the behavior, if you're driving stoned, it's like driving drunk. If you're driving on methadone, it's like you're driving drunk, and you face the same penalties. That's what we need to have. It doesn't make any sense to have addicts in jail or murderers on the street, just like Dr. Hieb said in the last session. Now I'm going to turn it over to Phaedra. What's your opinion on legalizing marijuana? And do you think we ought to criminalize people that smoke and drive, or smoke and go out in public and act goofy?
Well, as I stated before, I'm for it personally, but I would agree with you 100% that you need to criminalize those kinds of behavior, because at that point you are infringing on the rights of others. You are infringing on my continued right to exist and not be hit by your car if you're driving around stoned, just as if you are driving around drunk. That said, any of the people that I have ever met who have used marijuana recreationally or medically have never been the type to get into their car when they're stoned. So I feel like that would be less of a problem than it seems to come up in conversation. But even so, yes, of course, that if that's going to be criminal behavior for one sort of mind-altering substance, alcohol, then anything else that we might also choose to allow people to use in their free time should be the same.
Absolutely. Now, what's been your experience with medical marijuana?
Well, like I say, I don't see medical marijuana. What I see is the results of drug use in people that get beat up. That's what I do for a living. And that tends not to be marijuana. But your point about crime, I think, is a really good one. 75% of the drug lords' money comes from marijuana. And look what happened. When we outlawed alcohol, we got the mob, because suddenly the price of alcohol allowed organized crime to be successful. When we outlawed drugs, especially marijuana, what have we gotten? We've gotten the Cali cartel and the MS-13 guys shooting each other and us in the streets. I say let's kick the legs out from under them, take out that 75% of their revenue, tax it, control it, make it legal, and get on with our life, and not worry, and stop militarizing our police force, and stop wasting a bunch of tax dollars. I just think it's a practical approach. And so far, I've been watching Colorado, and I so far have not heard that they've had some uptick in crime and damage. We hear the rare story about a child or somebody that gets into a marijuana stash. Do we not really think that's happening now when it's illegal?
Or children getting into an alcohol stash.
That happens all the time.
When I was in a family practice sitting in the ER, everyone, I mean, it's not like it happened every weekend. But it happened. I bet you 4 or 5 times in, a 6-month period of time, you'd have some kid come in with alcohol poisoning.
One of the things I hear people say is, well, but we can test for we can test for alcohol in driving, but we can't test for marijuana. And that's not really true. And in fact, I honestly think for workplace and for safety, it's easier to test for marijuana. I was in the Navy for 10 years, and trust me, people stopped using marijuana because you can test for it for 30 days. So if you're an airline pilot and there's supposed to be a window you don't drink because of the cognitive and the psychomotor damage, you can get really tanked up just before that window and not be quite right the next day, but you'll test 0. But if you get tanked up on marijuana, that sits in your system for 30 days. So it's actually easier to weed those people out.
All right. Now, one of the things we know is government is addicted to its tax base. That's what it does. I mean, so if you legalize marijuana and you tax it, doesn't that give the government incentive to become even more intrusive in your life than it would be if you didn't legalize it?
Actually, user taxes are the one fairly moral tax that I don't have a huge problem with. I mean, if you're going to tax, like toll roads, if you're driving on the road, you pay the toll, it goes directly to the road. That's a moral thing. I really object to the income tax. And Thomas Jefferson said it's, to force someone to pay with his taxes for things he finds unethical, that's tyranny. And I'm paraphrasing that a little bit, but that's the problem with so I'd like to see the income tax go away and tax this. I mean, I'm not saying this will make up for the income tax, but there are other ways to do that. We have to, here's the thing about taxes. You can tax yourself into oblivion. They always grow government faster. We have to make the decision to shrink government ahead of taxes.
You bet. Now, Phaedra, you had a couple of follow-up questions?
Well, since we're getting close to the end of the show here, I wanted to ask you, as the Libertarian Party candidate for governor of Iowa, why would you choose to run a race that it could easily be argued you will not win?
Well,
you can see from recent elections, I think actually last November in Virginia, Robert Sarvis won I think 6.5% of the vote, and that was considered a huge success to get 6.5% of the vote. How do you expect to do in this race? And if you don't expect to win, then why are you running anyway?
Well, my lieutenant governor candidate, Ryan Kelso, and I, we sat down with the heads of the Libertarian Party, and we said, look, if we're going to spend all this time and energy, we're going to go to win. And here's why I think it's possible. Things have changed. In a recent Gallup poll, 65% of Americans are unhappy with both the Democrats and the Republicans. If you look in Iowa, we're split about a third, a third, a third. A third Republicans, a third Democrats, and a third are Libertarian Independent. You really, as a Libertarian, if we could capture 6 to 8% of the Democrats and 6 to 8% of the Republicans and most of the Independents, we've won in this race with three-way. There's the political, I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's not the Politico, but it's a national political magazine said, Branstad's falling like a rock in the polls. He's below 40% now, I think, or at 40%. And they said, quote, Jack Hatch is not the man to pick up the mantle. So, I really think people have got to recognize, the people are afraid to vote for a third party because they're afraid that guy's going to win. Whichever party they're in, they're afraid the other guy's going to win. But the real truth of it is, and this is why I've suddenly become a Republican and gotten out of that party system, is because one day I woke up and I said, it doesn't matter which one of those guys wins. They are both leading us down they're both driving on the same road from Des Moines to Detroit. They're driving down a road of economic decline and depression. I don't know if you've seen the email, but I love this email. It's a picture of Hiroshima, where I was stationed near there when I was in the Navy. Hiroshima, and a beautiful first-class city with skyscrapers and lights. And then it shows Detroit, that's just this bombed-out shell. And it asks the question, what's worse for cities, the nuclear bomb or 50 years of bad government? And the answer is clearly 50 years of bad government. It doesn't matter. If you, and all your listeners, anybody can prove me wrong, through every administration, these guys have grown government. If you think we can continue down that road, I'm in this race for my children. I have 2 boys that live in the state. I don't want to see them collapse. I don't want to see this whole system collapse. We may not be able to save America, but let's save Iowa from this. This is fiscal absurdity, and we have to take back the state from the professional people that have been running our lives. So that's why I'm in the race.
All right. Well, we want to thank special guest host Phaedra, for coming on today. We really appreciate you coming in and pinch hitting for Lefty. I know I didn't give you much time to prepare. I really do appreciate it. I do say some awful things to people, so I apologize if I made mad. We also want to thank Dr. Lee Hieb, who is a Libertarian candidate for governor. I will tell you, I like that governor's getting a run for his money. I think that shakes up the system. I think it creates more opportunity for discussion. Why don't you tell our listeners again how they can get a hold of you and donate to your campaign?
Oh, that'd be great. If you go on my website, it's www.hieb, H-I-E-B, it's I before E if you were trained before Common Core, so it's hieb.com or .org. Either one will get you there. www.hieb2014.com. And you can find all the issues. You can find all about us. You can find how to donate. And we'd like 10,000 Iowans that really want to take back their freedom to donate $20, and we'd be in good shape.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody for tuning in. We want to thank all of our sponsors, Bertrosian Associates, Lubinas Law Firm, Brad Zahn for Congress, Des Moines Anesthesia, Halo Capital for sponsoring our show. We really appreciate it. We'll be back next week. Stay tuned. We do have Facebook, Twitter. Oh, man. Our social media gal's going to get all mad at me. We have Facebook and Twitter and docandlefty.com and all this other stuff I forgot to mention. That's what happens when my two main people aren't here. Anyway, we'll be back next week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys. Both of them.
Love these guys. Get over here. Get over here. Love both of them.